wants. And as the CEO, the driver, essentially, I'm just a vehicle for this idea to come to fruition. And it has nothing to do with my own egotistical needs and desires, right? Many people think that they want to become entrepreneurs so they can have a fancy car, they can have a Ferrari, and then you meet all the people who have Ferraris thinking that they'll impress girls, but the only people they impress are their guy friends, and girls are like.
Hey everyone, today we interviewed Parul Gujral, founder and CEO of Snowball, a new mobile app focusing on marrying crypto with traditional wealth generating robo-advisors. Parul is a bright entrepreneur and passes on some insight into what it's like trying to help a startup go viral. As always, please remember that nothing here should be considered financial advice. Let's get it. I'm sitting here with my main man, Q. Q, how you doing?
I am doing good. This is a nice morning we have. We have a great guest on, one that was recommended from Brian Kerr from Kava Labs. So I'm glad that we could finally get Parul Gujral on, and we'll talk to him in a moment. I want to hear your background. In a recent interview as well, you talked about your kind of family's history, which I want to touch on because it's a fascinating story. But Parul, it's Friday. How are you feeling today?
I'm ready for a drink. Happy Friday.
Gotcha. Well, hey, you see the drinks behind Mike there, so we like to drink a little bit as well. So feel free to get up and make yourself one while we're talking. But yeah, man, let's touch on your background. I know you got a hard stop here in about 50, 60 minutes. So let's talk on your background. Let's talk on your family's background, because I really was interested in that story.
Sure. So I think you're referring to the inception story of Snowball, and it was inspired by an uncle of mine, and he's the reason my family came to the United States. My family started as villagers for generations in India, and not only villagers but farmers. My uncle was the oldest of 13. I'll try to fast forward through this story. I've said it so many times that people who are listening to me on the internet will probably sick of hearing it. But oldest of 13, he applied to go to UC Berkeley. He got in. 1,000 villagers gave their life savings for him to be able to go to UC Berkeley. And so philanthropy is a huge part of my family, starting with my uncle, who brought us all to the United States and gave us the opportunity to one dream and for those dreams to come true. And so he's been supporting those 1,000 villagers and their kids. He just retired, I want to say like 6 to 8 years ago, from the same company that he got an internship with, which is a water engineering company, whilst at UC Berkeley. And my uncle is one of the most risk-adverse people that I've ever met. And so one day he asked me, beta, which means son in Hindi, how do I invest in this Bitcoin? And I said, Uncle, I think you mean Bitcoin. And this is how. And at that point, it was an epiphany, and realizing that there's going to be a number of folks that are not technically savvy, city dwellers living in melting pots that have exposure to information, and that information of like the future of money or technology, how to utilize technology, how to do it in a safe way, whether it's older or younger generation or areas that just are privy of the resources or the resourcefulness to go into a further depth of that. So we started Snowball, and it's been a very interesting experience so far.
Yeah. So how does that level of entrepreneurship within your own family kind of play out in your day-to-day as like a CEO, as a founder? Just give me your insight into, because again, I watched a ton of videos in preparation for this, interview, and you really have a great entrepreneurial mind. And I kind of want to, get in there before we get into Snowball. So I really give me your entrepreneurial and business philosophy as a CEO and founder.
Yeah, I mean, so my experience at Snowball has been very different than any other entrepreneurial endeavors or intrapreneurial endeavors, which many people are having, right, as leaders in organizations or philanthropies, et cetera. And this experience was unique because it was like coming to a world full of apex predators, right? So this idea of Snowball is this idea that the market wants. So the lady of opportunity whispers what the world wants. And as the CEO, the driver, essentially, I'm just a vehicle for this idea to come to fruition. And it has nothing to do with my own egotistical needs and desires, right? many people think that they want to become entrepreneurs so they can have a fancy car. They could have a Ferrari, and then you meet all the people who have Ferraris thinking that they'll impress girls, but the only people they impress are their guy friends, and girls are like, something that's more comfortable. It doesn't make my hair messed up. Or some sort of significance outcomes where people look at them and as they're important. And those are really the wrong reasons to start a company. And if those are the reasons, you're less likely to be successful. And it's an interesting parody of how the world works, because all the inspirational Instagrams that are out there are really pointing towards these outcomes. For me, Snowball was an experience of me taking a problem that the Lady of Opportunity had whispered into a world full of apex predators. When I took it to the ocean, there were great white sharks that breached me in the form of venture capitalists. When I took it to the jungle, I got mauled by the bears in the form of regulators. And when I took it to the mountains, I got clawed by the mountain lions in the form of customers. But something very unique happened in this process. When the idea didn't die, it evolved. And so, Snowball has been an evolution of ideas looking to find product market fit, from idea inception stage to going to market to gearing up for a grandiose global launch. And that's what brings us to this day.
Yeah, no, it's a great way to put it. Very eloquent. And you really touched on, from an entrepreneurial standpoint, an interesting balance, and one that I think a lot of people don't generally understand, maybe unless they jump into entrepreneurship. And that's that, if you want to be successful, you have to do it for the right reasons, where all of the kind of structural components of starting a business or being an entrepreneur are revolved around, capital management or raising money, right? Everything that's focused on profit. So it's an interesting balance. It sounds like you're really getting there. You also mentioned, obviously, there's a lot of, kind of plans, big things happening with Snowball. You guys have a roadmap on your website with tons of different bullet points there that we definitely want to get into. But for those who haven't heard of Snowball yet, can you give us a brief description of what Snowball is and essentially how it works?
Yeah, sure. So let me start with what Snowball was and what Snowball is going forward. Snowball was a portfolio investment company. Our mission is to democratize access to information, and that information is in the form of a professionally made portfolio. And so we think about who's investing in a similar asset class, stocks. About 46% of the United States is investing in stocks, but the vast majority of those people are investing through some sort of mutual fund, some sort of ETF. So what does that experience look like? Some sort of index. You want to make an investment, and so you go to a professional, whether it's a robo-advisor or a financial manager. What's a professional? Someone who's licensed and someone who's regulated. Then based on your own risk appetite, you fill out some survey or have a conversation with them. They recommend a portfolio. You're extremely high risk. I want to invest in the top 100 shit altcoins because they could go to the moon, right? Or you're super low risk. I want to have, 1 to 6% exposure to Bitcoin, and the rest I want to put in bonds and stocks. And then you set up your investment. You decide how often you'd like to invest. I want to invest my spare change. I want to invest every single paycheck from my 401k. I want to invest every single month, every single quarter, every single year automatically.
Right.
It's typically tax optimized. And so if you have like a robo-advisor like Wealthfront or Betterment, you've got tax loss harvesting. If you're investing in an index or ETF, it's automatically tax optimized. And then finally, whether the market is up or the market is down, you are either making dividends off of your dividend paying stocks, or you're making a yield based off of the bonds that you've done as part of your portfolio. And it's all risk adjusted. So you're investing over various asset classes such that they're in theory uncorrelated and truly diversified. And that was a frame of thinking that we had when we started Snowball. How can we bring that similar experience, given the ETF hasn't been legally approved in the United States? We have an ETP that's been approved in Switzerland, but that's not a true diversified instrument. But what can we do to democratize access to information so anyone who opts to play has the opportunity to win without having to become a master? automate it, tax optimize it, as well as give them access to a portfolio that they could, in a few clicks of a button, subscribe to, and automatically invest in and have it rebalance, et cetera. And where we started was Snowball crypto portfolios. And so we've created several crypto portfolios that all were correlated to the price of Bitcoin. So you can have a portfolio of Bitcoin, Litecoin, Ethereum, et cetera. And it was weighted. We did back testing. We did a deep analysis. We tracked the projects, see who's building on top of them, what the innovations were happening in the developer communities, met the founders in many cases. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to meet the founder of Bitcoin, but I did meet a few people who claimed that they were. And we allowed our users to invest in these portfolios through, one of the 9,000 bank accounts that they have. We went through a regulatory process, which landed us as a registered investment advisor for a period of time. And when we launched in the market, we had 150% month over month growth. And the background of our team is marketing. I had my own growth hacking consultancy. Our CMO has a platform with millions and millions of users that are subscribed. He's getting 3,000 to 15,000 new followers a day on Instagram, on just one of his Instagram accounts. And we've created viral loops. And in addition to that, I write for Forbes as a contributing author, and my co-author is the chief digital officer of Forbes. And we're writing a series, which we've already launched a couple articles in, on how to make products go viral. And so that would be our strong suit and our experience that we would like to share with the world, because frankly, the success of crypto companies have been a factor of the current price of Bitcoin. Bitcoin's up, right. People are into this industry, Bitcoin's down, everyone's gone. And so that was our platform historically. So getting back to your question, which is, what is Snowball? Snowball alludes to the snowball effect. The snowball goes down the mountain or the hill, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And our goal is to snowball your life, right? Snowball your finances, snowball your free time, snowball your happiness. And so our logo is a snowball with concentric circles, which represent growth. And to be true, we've spent a lot of time and energy on our branding, and been very, very fortunate. The gentleman who has helped with the psychology of our brand also did branding for Snapchat and Palantir and 23andMe and Phil's Coffee and Google Cloud and Facebook's aeronautic division, et cetera. And to be true to our purpose of the brand, we spend a lot of time with our employees focusing on their personal goals for growth, their professional goals, with our investors, with our partners, such that when we go to the market, and it will transpire genuinely in our marketing. And what Snowball is today and going forward is no longer a crypto portfolio investing company, but a wealth generation company. And we were thinking very deeply about this. What made crypto go viral? It was when your Uber driver or the person who cuts your hair became a millionaire overnight. These incredibly unsophisticated people are all of a sudden gaining tremendous amounts of wealth. And the core of the DNA of that virus is just making money. So the success of our company is, are we making our users money? And the biggest challenge we found is, there has been 13 market corrections since 2012. And one can forecast that it's reasonable that there will continue to be more market corrections on the horizon. And I consider a correction where the price of Bitcoin or the market goes down, the market cap goes down by 30% or more. And so how do you not only survive, but how do you thrive, and how do the users on your platform make money at that time? And so we're a wealth generation company that gives access to this brand new asset class of digital assets. So whether you want to invest in a portfolio of cryptocurrencies, which are risk adjusted, whether you want to invest in digital gold, gold that has been asset backed, digital gold, which is asset backed by physical gold in reserves, venture capital funds, which are tokenized, so you can have fractional ownership of VC, art that you would like to have of fractional ownership of, such that it'll increase in value, We allow you to do that, as well as a high interest yielding savings account where you could take your fiat and you could lend it through the Snowball platform and generate a yield that pays you every single second.
Gotcha. So, essentially moving from just strictly crypto, crypto portfolio manager to obviously expanding your offerings there. So, has Snowball launched yet? And if not, when will it launch? And what will be available for investors to, through obviously this automation process, which we want to get into, invest in and generate this wealth that you're talking about?
Yeah, so Snowball launched in July on iOS in 36 states in the US. Now, since in around mid-November, we've taken our platform to private VIP beta. What we found was we were growing and people started knowing about us. We were given hugs and warm welcomes and conferences, and I've traveled the world speaking as a thought leader, advising the leadership of Uganda on blockchain, and spoken in conferences in many countries now. And what we realize is people are starting to have recognition. And I was going against one of the principles that I advise in the Forbes articles that I'm writing, and that is how to win and how to win big, such that we decided to peel the onion backwards and see what the core of the business is. That's wealth generation. And we've gone into VIP private beta, gearing up for a blitz scale of the market with these new product offerings. And so our goal is to launch before the end of the quarter. We're likely to focus our launch overseas and then work our way back into the United States. We were doing a crowdfunding platform, a crowdfund on Republic. And we may or may not have been on some sort of TV show like Shark Tank that you may be able to see us on April 18th. And so I'm really excited about the big moves that we have on the horizon. But we started with an iOS app. We wrote it in React Native such that we're scaling it to Android as well as web, and our focus is going to be web.
Gotcha. Okay. So for those of you who maybe didn't know about Snowball before, at least the initial concept in that initial product was like an Acorns-like portfolio management system. We have a lot of people obviously listen to this podcast that are within the crypto industry. Some of them may have founded their own products themselves. So through that process of launching, and then as you said about the sharks and the lions, the tigers, the bears, what is something you learned about the market and about creating a crypto product and then having to not rebrand, but kind of restructure that product? What are some of the lessons learned from that initial launch?
Yeah, I mean, if someone's telling you that they can guess the market, you want to ask them what else they're lying to you about, right? The markets are extremely irrational. They're manipulated by whale groups for self-interests. And what we found when we launched was the idea was having an idea of diversification by investing in multiple tokens. But what we found was that these tokens, the large market cap tokens, are strongly correlated to the price of Bitcoin. So you don't have true diversification. And Bitcoin has outperformed essentially majority of portfolios that are out there. And so how can you create true diversification? And that's what we've been working on. And what we're doing is we've created stablecoin portfolios mixed with Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies, such that you can have a yield that you're generating on the stable asset via lending. You can minimize the volatility of your overall portfolio. And depending on the portfolio ratio, even if the market is down 30, 40, 50%, you could still break even or be profitable. And so those were the biggest learnings. The success of this industry is, if you look at the product life cycle of success, there's something called crossing the chasm. Have you guys heard of that? You're familiar?
Right. Yep.
So if you look at the industry itself, the first 2.5% of your users are the innovators. Typically, they're the adventure capitalists, right? The high net worth individual who has a huge disposable income to invest in extremely high risk, and they believe in the vision. And you have an MVP or an alpha or just a white paper, if you think of 2017 in crypto. Then you have the early adopters, which is, I believe, the next 13.5%. And they're awaiting validation for the first 2.5%. And that's when you have an MVP product. It's imperfect. It doesn't have all the bells and whistles, but it does the core functionality.
Right.
Then you have the chasm, and then you have the early majority, late majority, and laggards. The chasm is really, is this product going to be successful to bridge? In crypto itself, right now, when we think of blockchain, which is the underlying technology of crypto, is we are laying down the plumbing, right? The plumbing is being laid down, and people who are building the towers and castles on top of it are building it on very unsturdy grounds. But one can forecast, if you're bullish or following some of the trends of these very well-experienced and tremendously successful venture capitalists like Andreessen, that this is an industry that's here to stay and it's going to be profitable. I believe Mark Andreessen said that blockchain has more engineers working on it than any other technology since the history of the internet. And I'm currently in Kiev, in Ukraine. And to take another statistic, they say that you can throw something and it'll probably hit a blockchain engineer. There's literally more blockchain engineers here than there are plumbers in this city.
Yeah, it's certainly a lot of opportunity in the blockchain industry for sure. And we've seen that kind of up and down and roller coaster effect happening with price. But from a fundamental standpoint, from an interest standpoint, it's really seems to have steadily grown. I want to dig into Snowball here. You talked a little bit about kind of this concept of stable coins plus Bitcoin, or stable coins plus a risk-adjusted altcoin, perhaps. Are these portfolios that should be able to provide returns, whether Bitcoin is up or down? Are they set up in the form of like an index fund, right, where you're kind of managing the portfolio, or are they using more of some sort of algorithmic trading strategy that has shown results over time and maybe is market neutral? Are they using both, right? How kind of with obviously giving up your without giving up your secret sauce, do these portfolios work to do exactly what you said?
I mean, we look at like the S&P 500 index, or just indexes in general, as an example, as an inspiration of what we're building. They're weighted, they're passive investing vehicles, they're transparent of what the investment thesis is, and they're automated. And so what you can see is what the allocation is going to be, what the rebalancing time horizon is, and what the past performance was. But past is not indicative of the future, of course. And that's the ideology. And launching this next version of Snowball, our vision is to be a true robo-advisor, in which you have two options when you're starting the process out with us. And the number one is we ask you several questions about what your risk appetite is, what your investing goals are, what other asset, what your investing expertise is. And you have an option for us to recommend a portfolio or portfolios, or you can choose on your own. And once we make the recommendation, you can change what the recommendation is and invest in multiple portfolios based on how much you'd like to invest. The data that we have from when we launched was 71% of the users that downloaded Snowball set up automatically monthly recurring deposits. And so on the business side, you can actually dollar cost average and get the highs and the lows of the market. And when you're investing in an ETF or an index or a portfolio, a VC fund, et cetera, you're not trying to become an overnight millionaire. You're trying to invest for the long term or hodl. And that's our aspiration, is to defer people, to not encourage people to come in and out, become overnight millionaires as unsophisticated investors and choose what tokens, but invest in these portfolios that can generate results in the long term.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. I think that especially in the traditional financial realm, that's what people look for. And you really do, as you said, need that kind of robo-advisor, right? If you want to reach some sort of mass scale, if you want to cross that chasm, like you said, you have to have something there that's semi-automated. It's rebalancing, right? But as you kind of look at your target audience, right? So you have obviously the cryptocurrency market, which many of whom, really almost all of them, are speculators, right? They want to be those overnight millionaires, whether they're traders or kind of these quote unquote investors, whether they only like Bitcoin, whether they like altcoins. generally they are, the speculator. It's the, the digital gold rush, if you will. And then, on the other side, you have your traditional financial folks who, maybe have stored up some cash for a long time. Like you said, their 401k, right? And as we saw with the crash after late 2017, early 2018, it seems now that a lot of people are kind of scared of crypto. They're scared of Bitcoin. They're worried that they're going to get in and the price is going to cut by 50%. So understanding the desires of the crypto market to, be the most successful speculator, and kind of the fears that you have in the more traditional robo-advisor market with crypto. How do you guys kind of toe that line to ensure that there is an audience that you're reaching with Snowball?
Sure. I mean, I think the bottom line is, are people making money? And if they're making money, they're going to tell their friends and family, peers about it, et cetera, colleagues about it. And so that's the biggest challenge of this industry, is the success or lack thereof has been based on the current price of Bitcoin. But by having other assets that are less volatile as part of your portfolio, you're able to mitigate your risk, but also optimize your returns. Now, those returns aren't going to be 1,000x, but maybe they could be 5, 10, 15%. And so this is why we're launching an interest savings account, where you can take your physical cash, your fiat, and lend it over the Snowball platform and generate 5 to 15% yield. And it will compound as well, and you get paid every single second, such that the neuropinephrine, the dopamine, is actually something that we're programming into the app. But also you have liquidity, right? When you can see yourself making money, and that's when you press start, when the deposit is received and someone lends the money, the interest rate is fixed for the week. And when you cash out, we can create these types of mechanisms that will help spread the word of crypto. But in addition to that, our products aren't just Bitcoin. Whilst we were very fortunate to have growth despite the market, we built a strong brand integrity within our following. We've got hundreds of thousands of people on a wait list. We've got very, very religious followers of our social media. We've created multiple weekly updates on what's going on in the industry. We're just providing value to people. And that's how Betterment was successful. And that's also how Charles Schwab became successful. Charles Schwab became successful because they gave information.
Interesting. So let's go through the mechanical process here. And I do like the fact that you mentioned that dopamine hit, because I feel like in this kind of dopamine filled environment that we have with Twitter and Instagram and all of these very instant gratification type applications, it's important to kind of draw the user. I know you talked about before the podcast, hey, most people's attention spans 20 minutes max. So we are hitting that mark about hitting now. So if you guys are still here, you're doing a great job. But let's go across the mechanical process of actually how you guys are placing these orders and executing these orders for the users. Take us through what happens when a user presses buy on the Bitcoin button, and then what's the custodial risk there of you guys owning those assets for the user?
Yeah, sure. I'll try to tell you this without giving away our secret sauce. So I'll give you a very general high level. The Snowball app is a front end, so the user comes onto the Snowball app. As a matter of fact, I'll tell you how we were doing it before, and not specifically how we're doing it going forward. So the user comes and uses the Snowball app. And through the Snowball app, they connect their bank account. You can invest in a portfolio of your choice. When you press invest, you can set up automatic monthly recurring investments or a one-time investment. You connect a bank account at that point where you log into your bank, how you normally log into your bank. We were using a company called Plaid, which just recently got bought by Visa for $5.4 billion. I'll take credit for helping generate some revenue for those folks. And then on the back end, then we send you through a KYC process, KYC AML, and we found that created much higher conversion rates if people were already committed to investing, finishing the KYC process. And then at that point, they ACH'd money over to us. And once the money hit our bank accounts, we would execute in their behalf on all of the tokens. And we took those monies and we put it through a smart order router, which we have multiple exchange account partnerships such that we're executing at the best rate as an institution. And so we get the best rate and execute at the appropriate exchange. Then we take those tokens and we put it back into the custodian. And the custodian will take the tokens and put them in cold storage such that it's unhackable or less likely to be hacked. And they also put a massive insurance policy over the tokens. And then at that point, in the front end, you can see the current value of the portfolio at the time the execution happened. And when you want to exit, again, we go through that same process and the tokens to the smart order router, to the exchange, and then we send back to the custodian, and then we send it back ACH to your bank account. And so in theory, based on the product that we launched in the market, it was unhackable because if someone hacks into your Snowball account, the only thing they can do is send your tokens back to, cash them out, and you have money back in your bank.
Gotcha.
Now going forward, we're launching a DeFi product as well as a centralized product, really depending on the geolocation such that we can do this with a legal path to success. One thing that we're very fortunate of is having some of the best investors behind us. Our first investor is Richard Blum, who's a pretty well accomplished hedge fund manager. His wife is Senator Dianne Feinstein. So going the legal clear path to success was really important to us, and having accountability as an early stage startup. And there's two ways to have accountability. One is through regulations and the other is through smart contracts. And we aspire to do both. But we also have Kevin Lin, co-founder of Twitch, John Dillon, former CEO of Salesforce, David Kovacs, one of the co-founders of Call of Duty, co-founder of NEM Foundation, and the list goes on and on. Former chief compliance officer of Ripple. And so, we've been aspiring to what lacks in this industry and how do you get outside of crypto is trust, right? People are only going to, money is your livelihood. It's your nest egg, and people are trusting us with their money. And so we operate, or at least aspire to operate, with the amount of security, technical diligence that a bank would take in practice. And being regulated was an approach that we had. And so our customers the vast majority of them were either novice or had never invested in crypto.
Got it. Okay. So, looking out, right, you said you guys are aiming to launch, it'll be overseas to start. So all of our European, Asian listeners, right, Middle East, whatever the case may be excited there because you'll get the first chance at Snowball. But as you look out the rest of 2020 into 2021, trust is huge, right? It seems like you guys have really built that and continue to build that. I want to, last thing, I want to get to the Shark Tank piece you talked about. But before that, how do you see Snowball really generating revenue, really kind of crossing that chasm, continuing to bring in users, right? What's the overall business model that you guys have set forth to ensure that Snowball isn't, kind of a flash in the pan and something that doesn't work out?
Yeah, sure. So we charge less fees if you were to buy the assets from Snowball versus buying it on another platform by yourself like Coinbase most of the time. And so we take a transaction fee on the way in, on the way out. Depending on what the service is, right, we're going to have tax loss harvesting at some juncture on the horizon, and that'll be a free service in which we only take a percentage of the monies that we save you. But really the intention for us is, instead of taking fees, sharing the wins with you. Right now we have a transaction fee though, and on a spread. And what we also do is, with the partnerships that we have with the exchanges, we get a discount. And so while we can charge you market rate, we're able to buy it at a fraction lower than what the market rate price is. And so for the user, you're not necessarily paying a premium, but what you're doing is getting this service at a very low cost. And this is why robo-advisors have been tremendously successful, like Betterment. their fee structure was substantially less. They brought trust, and by bringing trust and having less of a fee structure, scale is necessary to win, but also you're providing a service that everyone else can't compete with, or it's much difficult and it's harder to enter. The barriers to entry are much higher.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, that it makes sense. That it's kind of a smart order routing, essentially, with a beautiful front end, and that hopefully retail investors, right, new investors, less sophisticated investors, will really cling on and understand how that snowball effect continues to happen. So, as we kind of wrap up here, my final question before I kick it over to Q for one more is, what are some of the more exciting things that are coming out? You kind of hinted at a Shark Tank appearance here. You guys have a ton of different investors. Is there anything that you're really looking forward to that you think will propel Snowball, really into the mainstream?
Yeah, so we have a handful of distribution partners, which is very exciting. We're licensing our technology such that if you want to bring it to your geolocation, and you have the legal acumen such that you can start launch the product with a regulatory path to success, we're launching a licensing and API of the Snowball platform such that you can white label it and say powered by Snowball in different locations around the world. This has been particularly interesting for iBankers overseas who are already doing this process manually. But a lot of the portfolios we have are proprietary as well. We have a very, very potential exciting partnership on the horizon, which we're on the final stages of with one of the biggest, funds in the space. I'll give you a hint. They own 18% of the blockchain, such that we'll have staking portfolios on Snowball. And so you can still have a volatile, risky portfolio, but you're not necessarily only banking on the market going up. You're able to monetize the monies or the tokens that you already have. And so I think staking is something, as well as lending, that's gotten a lot of attention recently. My personal theory is gaming is going to be potentially the reason why this industry does go viral, because if the blockchain could operate in the back end and the blockchain creates trust, gaming, there's not so much trust, and gaming has an incredible amount of scale of young people, which is the next generation, not necessarily young people, but many young people. And so, yeah, I'm really interested to see what different countries are going to do with this technology, what the financial institutions like banks are going to do with this technology, because really the plumbing is just being laid. And with Moore's law, with quantum computing on the horizon, I don't even think we can fathom the technology of the future. Some of the most exciting technology innovations on the horizon, I'm advising a company called Universe Network, and they have a device that allows you to create free Wi-Fi for about 28 miles, as well as telephony, as well as TV. And you have Facebook's aeronautic division, where they're launching these drones that can fly for 3 years. And you have Earthlink, which is being launched by SpaceX. They want to launch 12,000 satellites, and I think they've already launched 100 or something or so, which would put the whole world online. There's 7.8 billion people in this world. Out of that, 4.8 billion don't have access to the internet, right? And they say a kid today with a smartphone has, in a developing nation in Africa, has more computing power than the president of the United States did 20, 25 years ago, such that we have this new market that's entering the biggest economy in the world. And the biggest economy in the world is not US. The biggest population in the world is not China. The biggest population in the world is people who use the internet. And the biggest economy is those who transact on the internet. And the currency of the internet is digital. 98% of the dollar is digital. 95% of the euro is digital. And so money has evolved since its inception. There is a more efficient means. What will it be? If we can create pressure, now the world is online and you have 4.8 billion people entering this world, but they're unbanked, they don't have identity. And if you can create a mechanism for them to be able to, one, have an identity, perhaps it's Facebook Libra, perhaps it's something else. If you can create a mechanism for them to transact with their peers, the pressure for the smartphone providers to drastically decrease the price is going to be there innately. The pressure to have a fiat to some sort of digital asset crypto gateway is going to be present. And people can wake up in the morning and have digital currencies that they can transact and buy things. I mean, I think the world is going to evolve very slowly and then very quickly.
Yeah. So I actually recently saw a post where they were kind of breaking down some of the biggest companies of maybe 50 years ago, 100 years ago, and now the biggest companies in the past 20 years. And it's funny because the first companies were companies that created products and they distributed those products to people. I mean, you're talking Walmart, you're talking, all of these distributors. And now what happens is you have all these companies that are essentially the gateways to our digital lives. So you got Facebook, you got Instagram, you got all of these huge companies that connect us to the internet. And that's like, that really plays into what you're saying there. So yeah, I do want to talk on this Golden Kitty Award, but the question in relation to that point that I just made, there's 7.2 billion people in the world. How do we get crypto to cross that chasm? What's it going to take for Bitcoin to cross the chasm to these people, other than, having products like Snowball and the continuous, building of applications that connects users to the blockchain?
Well, I think it's a factor of time, right? Bitcoin was based off of not trusting your government and having the right to have your money to be able to make international remittances without a middleman taking a fee or freezing it and doing it in a quick manner. But what that also has given birth to is centralized currencies. And so I can forecast there will be a country that not only speculates that they're going to create a national digital currency, but actually creates it. And it's only going to take one or two before that creates a snowball effect. These currencies will be drastically incentivized, such that it'll take away from these speculative instruments that are backed by nothing, of like most of these cryptocurrencies. But I think that what it'll also do is create a strong use case for cryptocurrencies if you want to have privacy. And so you'll have a very clear line, instead of a blurry one where you have these centralized country-based or institution-based currencies. And then you'll have these private coins, which are, you're able to transact and do it in a way such that, it can't be taken away, it can't be frozen, etc. You can do your self-custody. And so I think that's strongly married with these 4.8 billion people coming into this digital landscape, because these people, if you look at how developing nations innovate, right, they typically they don't do 3G, 4G, LTE, 5G, etc. They go from edge to 4G, right? They make major leaps. And creating physical currency, paper currency, I think is less likely than having entrepreneurs that have access to resources like they never have had before. And so, I think it would be very realistic in the next decade to see this mass adoption as something that's real, or at least the start of it. And, I think one of the major initiatives is going to be seeing how regulators react to the JP Morgans of the world that are creating the JPM coin and the China coins of the world. So
interesting. Well, I mean, we're kind of running up on 11 o'clock here, and I don't want to keep you too much longer, but can you touch on that ProductHunt award that you guys were nominated for, and how important that is? And then I guess Mike has probably one more question before we wrap.
Sure. So when we launched our product in July, we launched it on ProductHunt. We were the number 2 product of the day, number 4 product of the week. We were the number 2 product of the day, but we had, I think, 2 times as many upvotes and 3 times as many likes and 5 times as many comments. And so I don't know what's going on with that algorithm, but we were just nominated for the Golden Kitty Awards, which I guess ProductHunt does every single year for each category. So we were nominated to be in the top 9 crypto apps from 2019. So it would be very, very helpful if you were to go, and this actually, tomorrow is the last day, Saturday, I don't know what the date is today.
I believe it's the 25th.
Saturday the 25th is the last day that you can vote. But it would be really helpful if you went to Google search Product Hunt, Golden Kitty, Snowball, and looked at all of the companies that have been nominated and upvote the one that resonates with you the most. And if that's Snowball, very grateful of that. And if it's not, leave us a comment on what you'd like to see, such that we could fulfill some of your needs. So
yeah,
Beautiful.
we can. I'll keep that link in the description as well, and we can tell that you're a hardworking entrepreneur based on not knowing the day of the week right now. So that oftentimes, head down. But Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, no, that's beautiful. We'll definitely, like you said, get that link in there. For anyone else out there who wants to follow along with Snowball's growth, what's the best way for them to do that? What's website link, Twitter, all that fun stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. So our website is www.snowball.money. So Snowball.Money. Snowball.Money. Find us on Instagram. We're very active on Instagram. I think we have like 19,000 followers. Our CMO has over 5 million followers. We have a Telegram group. There's so many ways. Just Google search Snowball, and we actually come up on the first page of Google. And then we also have an invite-only wait list, secret.snowball.money. That's the back door. So if you go to just go to secret.snowball.money, put your name there, as well as if you're in the US, you can download our app from the App Store. And what that'll do is allow you to get onto our wait list as well and apply to be a VIP. So you could be a beta tester where we take 0 fees. And the platform's up, it's running, it's beautiful, and we're continuing to innovate on it. I'll give you a quick sneak peek of it. There it is.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Nice.
So, yeah.
Nice, man. Well, that's awesome. That's exciting. Congrats on all the growth thus far. It sounds like from a marketing standpoint, from a development standpoint, you guys have, now shifted a little bit, since the first iteration of Snowball, but are, very clearly full speed ahead. So congrats on all that growth. And thanks again for coming on the podcast.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, folks. It was wonderful. I enjoyed it. And if I could be a resource to you in any way, shape, or form, please do let me know. You can find me on Twitter at Parul Gujral.
Thanks, Parul. Appreciate you coming on, man. Hey guys, we hope you enjoyed today's episode. Make sure to check out Layer 1 on all the audio and video platforms listed in the description. Thanks for stopping by, and we'll see you next week.